Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am John Panepinto, and as you know, I love movies. So what I decided to do was watch every Best Picture nominee so that you don't have to. And I'm going to talk about them right here, to you, and with some special guests. Today we'll be talking about Best Picture nominee and very popular movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This film was nominated for 10 Oscars, including Best Picture, as well as Best Supporting Actor in Ke Huy Quan, in which he is probably the front runner, as well as Best Supporting Actress for Stephanie Hsu and for Jamie Lee Curtis, and for Best Actress in Michelle Yeoh, as well as Best Director, Best Costume Design, Best Editing, and a few other things. Today I'm going to bring on my brother, who has yet to make an appearance anywhere here on our social media, but has been asking for quite some time. And since he's been telling me that I should watch this movie and that he loves this movie, I figured I'd bring him on to talk about his opinions. Hi, Mike.
Hey, John.
How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm okay. So today I want to talk to you about Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is a movie that you've been pushing me to watch since way before I watched it.
Have you not watched it yet?
I have watched it now.
Okay.
I have. Yeah.
Surprising.
I know it's an ongoing thing of whether or not I've seen it. No, I did watch this, and I watched it with the anticipation that it was going to be incredible because you really pumped it up.
Okay.
And so, I let slip a little bit before this, not when you were here, when you were not here, that I liked it a lot. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say incredible. I liked it. I loved it. But we're talking about Best Picture at the Oscars here. I don't know.
As we've been talking about it the last couple of days,
yeah,
I can see where you're coming from in comparison to the traditional movies that win.
Yeah,
and the traditional, more traditional movies that it's up against, because it's really goofy. It's really quirky.
Yeah,
but it's got some characteristics that are significantly above some of its contemporary comparison movies, of which it may not have any. And that's part of the issue. And I will disclose this. Last night, not in preparation for this, but good context, I did watch Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
I haven't gotten to it just yet. Yeah.
Didn't tell you that before this, but that reminded me just how quirky Everything Everywhere All at Once is.
Well, Marcel the Shell is nominated for Best Animated Picture.
It might have my vote. We can cover that if there's time.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's look at the things really quickly that Everything Everywhere All at Once is nominated for. It is nominated for Best Picture, obviously.
Okay.
Best Actress, Michelle Yeoh. I think deservedly so.
It's a tough role.
Yeah.
It's a tough, okay. All right.
Yeah. Best Supporting Actress with Stephanie Hsu and Jamie Lee Curtis. So that's where
Less so Jamie Lee Curtis.
Listen, I love Jamie Lee.
It was fun.
Who doesn't love Jamie Lee Curtis? But come on. I don't think she was barely.
Is that role as impressive if it's not Jamie Lee Curtis?
No.
If it's
I don't
just
even know if that role's
regular
impressive and it is Jamie.
But it's a good context for the entire movie. Like that role is wild and weird and awkward, and someone as established as Jamie Lee Curtis makes it even more awkward and fun to have her doing that.
Yeah.
But it's wild. If I said to you, if I just gave you the context of that one role, I said, let me tell you what this one character in a movie I saw does. And they staple a thing to their head and they turn into hot dog fingers and they do all wild stuff. You'd be like, I'm not watching that at all. Right. Nor am I watching the movie about the shell. But,
right.
Right. But it comes together.
So Stephanie Hsu, who I think it was excellent in the movie, just gets no love anywhere else. And I thought she was a standout as a character. I thought she was one of the best. If you're going to contextualize, let's say you're going to contextualize this movie as a superhero movie, which it's not really, but if it is, she's one of the best superhero villains that you've gotten in a movie in a long time.
I agree. But I think if you contextualize this movie as a superhero movie, it shouldn't be the best picture. And if you contextualize it only as a multiversal movie, it maybe also shouldn't be the best picture. But it is, and maybe we can cover this, still to date, and there's been some contenders, the best multiversal depiction there is. Yes. Maybe the best one we're going to get.
Yeah.
And also part of the reason in a contextual spinoff, why when Doctor Strange came out, it fell even flatter for me, because we'd already seen an exemplary depiction of the multiverse that couldn't really be compared with.
Right. So then you get Best Supporting Actor, Ke Huy Quan, who I think was excellent. I think he deserves it. I think he will deserve it. If he wins, which I think he will, I think he absolutely deserves it.
I think this might be one of the best and most emotional depictions of specifically a mother-daughter relationship, but a parent-child relationship in the late stages of, it's probably more post-teen, like early 20s kind of thing. Like the relationship between the mother and daughter is the heart of the movie. And I love that that was the crux of the story rather than all the other noise around it, which is incredible to begin with. The journey that just her character takes in the sort of introspection of what her life could and should have been as part of that multiversal story is what makes the whole thing emotional. And I,
Right.
I don't know if we're spoiling it or not here, right? But how it sort of lands in the context of her relationship with her child
Yeah.
is the movie, right? So it's when people say, "What's this movie about?" You tell them there's a woman who staples the thing to her head, and then their fingers turn into,
Yeah.
and then there's googly eye rocks. It's like you might turn people off from going into that movie, and then what the movie does is it just sort of jackknifes this emotional story into what amounts to pomp and circumstance of the highest order.
Well, that's a theme with all of the best, not all, but a lot of the best picture nominees this year. I find that is a theme, is that you have hidden in these bizarro stories of over the top imagery and hard to follow weirdness. You have these very simple, real human stories at the center of them. This one not being maybe the most.
It's not that simple. It's highly complex. And I think at least I went into the movie not really like, I don't know that I even told you this, right? Or anyone did, right? You go into the movie and you're like, okay, multiverse, cool. I heard there's some crazy effects and weird story. And then you get hit with this emotional arc. And
Yeah.
you're like, what am I even watching right now? It is one of about 3 movies ever that I watched and then rewound and watched the entire thing again, straight right after, 5 minutes after it was over.
Yeah.
Right. I put my kids to bed and went back downstairs at 1 a.m. and rewatched it.
And I got to say, also, and it's not for us to speak to this necessarily, but it has to be addressed, that the way it portrays as the lead story in this film without like leaning heavily in any sort of, particularly going for it way, a typical Asian American family living
Right.
a very unremarkable, typical life is, how often is that represented in a film at this level, at this quality? So that has to be spoken to as well. I mean,
Absolutely. It's a story that doesn't get told contextually, right? And it's it's not my experience or yours, but I knew that woman. But we tell stories about all kinds of different cultures from different angles. This is a story in the Asian story, the Asian sort of experience that isn't told because
right.
it's the normal Americanized immigrant experience.
You don't
Right.
hear about it because it's often deemed irremarkable, and it's like, but that still makes it remarkable. And that's kind of the theme of the movie, right? Is that the reason she's remarkable is because she's so wholly irremarkable.
It's like one of those movies that you can't tell somebody what it's really going to be, otherwise you're ruining it for them in some way.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
because you can tell them it's a multiverse movie and they're like, oh, I love Marvel stuff and Kang and let me see how that goes, and then it's not that at all.
Right.
Right. It's that, but it also can turn off people who can't quite wrap themselves around the first 45 minutes of the movie.
I said this yesterday. It's kind of like asking for The Matrix to be to win Best Picture. Like, is it going to win Best Picture? I don't know. Maybe not. There's a lot of other weird things and like what they fall. And the thing is, this is one of the mainstream ones. This is one of those ones where people go, "Oh, it's never going to win." This is one of the first times I've ever seen all of the nominees, and I have to say, they're all, with a couple of big caveats, very good. And
this
so
is a year of
like
decent movies. Not that they are not always, but like movies that seem appealing to people. And we're saying, like, on that layer, the most appealing one aesthetically, or the craziest looking one.
The Matrix, I say that in that The Matrix dictated the way that stories were told for the next 15 years. I have a feeling that this is going to have that kind of impact.
I really think that we might look back and as our biggest movie franchise and studio, Marvel, is trying to do a multiversal saga after this came out, that it might be unachievable to reach that level of. I mean, it's a 2-hour movie that communicates that entire story succinctly. That's an incredible achievement. That's
Yeah.
really the achievement in writing. I guess that's like a screenplay award, but like that movie is succinct and makes sense. in 2 hours,
Yeah.
which is unfathomable given the detail and the directions that it goes. And it's telling the emotional arc within it, more than one of them.
Yeah. Agreed. Well,
Hard to duplicate.
yes, very much so. I appreciate you joining me.
Absolutely.
We look forward to seeing how this goes, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Talk soon.
Bye.
Thanks, John. Bye.
The other film I'll be discussing today is a film called Tar, starring Cate Blanchett. It is nominated for 6 Oscars, including, obviously, again, Best Picture. She herself, Cate Blanchett, is nominated for Best Actress, as well as Todd Field is nominated for Best Director. This is one of those films that I will say is often referred to as, in my opinion, I'm not trying to go hard on it. If you liked it, that's great. I call it Oscar bait. It's a movie with an interesting logline. It's about a world-famous conductor. She's famous the world over. She's highly regarded. And throughout the course of the film, and it's not a spoiler, it's part of the logline, her life starts to unravel, and it speaks a lot to the themes of what used to be referred to as the Me Too movement, cancel culture, all these things where it's, what happens when you start to see that these revered folks maybe are not who they say they are, or are maybe using their power to get ahead. And, when you say that, you say to yourself, that sounds like an interesting film. I have a thing I always say where there are some movies that sound better when described by me, not specifically me, although I like to tell stories. There are films that sound better or more appealing when described by me than when you actually watch it. This is that. And listen, I love classical music. I love the aesthetic of the world the movie takes place in, the subject matter, but it just felt like it was going somewhere and then went absolutely nowhere. And then every time it started to get a little interesting, it went back down to just being like, what are we doing here? Cate Blanchett herself gives an incredible performance as a wholly unlikable character, in my opinion. And that's good when it's intentional. But when it did not seem like that was the purpose, I mean, I take that back. It is the purpose. You're not supposed to like her. But I don't think you're supposed to not care about her the way that I did. This movie just wasn't for me. I'm not one to sit here and go, it was boring. It wasn't necessarily boring. It just did not seem to reach the goals it was reaching for. And it didn't touch me in any sort of emotional or even interesting way. And I was so into the idea of the movie. Like I said, the logline and the world the movie takes place in is kind of there for me. And we'll see as we talk about other movies, or as movies we have talked about, sometimes I get drawn into log lines and worlds and stories that I don't think that I would have gotten into. So I was left with an emptiness for this film, for Tar, just because I like a good drama. I like a good character piece. And this was just shy of both of those, in my opinion. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I probably couldn't direct a movie as well. And Cate Blanchett, of course, is always excellent. But I just felt that this movie left a little to be desired. But that's just me. Everybody's got their own opinions. Well, that about does it for today's Oscar Best Picture Roundup, whatever you want to call this. Thank you for watching. As always, please share if you want to see me do more of this kind of content. Talking movies and having on guests and discussing things that maybe aren't necessarily 100% comedy based. Let me know. The more feedback I get, the more happy I am to do things like this. I look forward to hearing what you guys think and seeing your comments on how you felt about these movies and all the other movies that we've talked about or are going to talk about. I look forward to hearing from you. And also, as always, please follow me at The Man with the Black Glasses on Instagram, at The Nothing Pod on Instagram, and on Facebook if you're, 65 and up. Thanks.